Now, let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ plus story for today. I'm Faye What? And let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Racism and transphobia issues from LGBTQ in Wilton Manors causes community leaders to meet. Is Wilton Manors an inclusive city for LGBTQ people by LGBTQ people? Some are suggesting perhaps not. On December 17th, an altercation occurred with Legacy Builders leader LaTanya Hobson. On social media, she described an exchange where the N-word was used against her at a business at the Wilton shops. There was an extensive response discussing if Wilton Manors is a community that is only for white gay men. Thursday, a community leadership meeting was held to discuss racism and homophobia inside the LGBTQ community of Wilton Manors. Leaders from nearly 20 diversity queer organizations and social justice advocates met at Ujima Conference Room to discuss the problem and potential actions. Al Ferguson, executive producer here for Hotspots Happening Out, attended and is largely reporting this story. Hobson went into great detail of the December 17th event, and others discussed the frequency of racism and transphobic events that some white gay members of our community exhibit. Trans Inclusive Group's executive director, Tatiana Williams, said, quote, "Wilton Manors is performing exactly as it was intended to," end quote, referring to the community structure built for white gay people. The often tense exchange told stories like why the Black and trans community fear for their safety in Wilton Manors and how other, even straight neighborhoods are more welcoming. Many discussed that they believe the community nature itself empowers individuals to be able to express racist and transphobic attitudes and actions. One participant said, quote, "I wonder if they know in the Black community we call it White Manors," end quote. Another said, quote, "Wilton Manors is not a community of color," end quote. While still another community leader said, quote, "I don't feel community in the LGBTQ community. It is not what is being represented," end quote. Political activist Michael Albetta discussed the Wilton Manors HRC rating. He explained that despite a 100% score in a sub-area, that city received a C evaluation in relation to community and government commitments. The meeting participants discussed options including a town hall, a community march, to even call for a boycott over awareness. The meeting drew attention to the contradiction of marginalization of LGBTQ people and at the same time LGBTQ willing to marginalize members in their own queer community. At the meeting, Vice Mayor Chris Caputo expressed his sadness in the incident and the perception of discrimination in Wilton Manors. He is hosting a meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, to discuss specific issues to address. They included how the city can be supportive, WNBA business alternatives, and more. Queer News Tonight will continue to follow this story closely. Let's begin by saying that racism and transphobia is not okay. Okay, it's not okay at all. And many people flee to Wilton Manors for a place of safety, for a place that they know that they can be seen, heard, and be safe, you know? So it truly saddened me to see that this happened to LaTanya, right? It is not a one-time thing. This has happened. I have other friends that are Black that have had similar situations like this happen to them in Wilton Manors, you know? It's got to stop. This is not the first that this conversation has come up. Hotspots Happening Out has hosted a town hall in the past. There has been certain things that have come up that we've tried, that people have tried to get this conversation going. I don't know if it's fallen flat. I don't know what's come out of this, but I know that it's a huge problem and something needs to happen. People need to react. People need to do something. You know, there's going to be a meeting tomorrow and hopefully something will come up from that. William, you were telling me something that the Bears were doing. Yeah, so the Bears of South Florida, at one of our board retreats, we talked about how we can make our group more diversified and also welcome the trans men to our pool parties. And so we as a group promote everybody's welcome. We welcome all our new members, whoever's a new member to our group, and that really increased our diversity. We also talked about having a trans man come to a pool party so that we're prepared and make sure they're welcome. And unbeknownst to us, a trans man had come in the interim to a pool party and sent us a great letter saying how warm and welcome he felt. And that for us is just our community itself trying to work on it within our own group. Yeah. So if we could spread that to all the other communities and different organizations, maybe we need to have a diversity training for all the nonprofits so all the leaders know how to approach and make sure everybody feels warm and welcomed. Because this should be a safe harbor for us in our community, because everybody else attacks us in our group.
we should be protecting each other within our group. We should be like a mother hen in Wilton Manors.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it breaks my heart to hear. Let's first state that everybody at this table, none of us can say that we've lived the experience of being black or being called the N-word or going through this kind of racism. I am a Puerto Rican Colombian girl, and my marginalization is brown, and we deal with our own stuff. You know what I mean? But I can't say that I know what that experience is like, right? It saddens me to hear someone say Wilton Manors is for and made for white gay men. You know, as 3 gay white men, what do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I think that we should apologize on behalf of everybody else in our community that is warm and welcoming. We're sorry this happened to you, or if this happened to anybody else. We apologize. This should not happen, but we need to make this a better place for everybody.
But it's also our responsibility to really look into different organizations that we're involved in and make sure that we are diversifying our teams. I know as Speak at the Gay Men's Chorus, that's something that's been very important to us, not just within the board, but the leadership teams as well. We have a vice president that works specifically with the members of Equity, Access, and Belonging. So that's helped to diversify our membership as well, and that also diversifies our audiences too. So it's something that's important to us, and I've been seeing a lot of board changeover with that as well. You know, bringing in different, not just people of color, but also of genders too. So and that's what has to start to trickle, I think, into a lot of how people may want to run a city and stuff. And you have to look at what's being represented, and if there is a group that feels like that they're being mistreated, they do need to be to be heard, and this is the type of platform that they need to express that. We do have a lot of work to do. It's not to say that we've ever rest on our laurels.
Yeah.
We do know that it's out there.
Yeah.
And as somebody that wants to be supportive of all communities, I have to start by educating myself and speaking out on myself and what is most uncomfortable to me, and ask the tough questions, you know.
And have the tough conversations. Alex, I'm going to go to you in a second. I want to read LaTanya's quote, because I reached out to LaTanya because I wanted to get her viewpoint. She has been a guest on our shows. She has been an incredible advocate. She's a consultant on a lot of things. Legacy Builders is one of the most influential community leadership program that is just doing big things. And when I saw her posting about her being called the N-word right there on Wilton Manors, I was freaking blown away. And then my second thought was I got mad. And then I thought, how long has community been feeling like this, and how come nothing has been done, right? So her quote was, reflecting on the history of racism and segregation in Florida, there are important truths that need to be acknowledged. Florida has the most recorded lynchings in America. That is why it's just as important to support museums, libraries, cultural diversity programs, and activations like Legacy Juneteenth Productions. It's essential to recognize the legacy of pain and trauma that continues to affect communities today, because it is disguised in our community so well. I'm working on no hate initiatives with Vice Mayor Chris Caputo, Chief of Police Blocker, along with FBI Civil Rights Hate Crimes Task Force for the City of Wilton Manors, and concrete plans for South Florida with community leaders such as Tatiana Braxton, Lorenzo Robertson, Amy Bloom, Morgan Mayfair, and many, many more. She's mad, and she has all the right reason to be mad. These are our brothers and sisters and theys and thems that are feeling this way, that are not feeling seen and heard. They spend their money too in Wilton Manor.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as a Wilton Manors resident, I do worry about people not being seen and heard. I actually live in one of the more lower income areas as a working class person, and few people realize that 1 out of every 3 Wilton Manors residents is non-white. People don't realize that. I'm not saying it's a very large non-white community, but the idea that there are no white people, I worry, is erasing the non-white community in Wilton Manors. At Wilton House, we're a very racially diverse community, but literally right in front of our building is a black bar, Chocolate City. People should try it sometime. The charter school across the street from us is a very large non-white population of students. You go to the elementary school here, very large non-white population, and I fear so much when hearing this talk, are we not seeing the actual non-white residents in Wilton Manors, And, if we want to be more supportive, remember that, there's a lot of issues of being able to afford to live in Wilton Manors. I'm not surprised we're seeing more of this happen as income inequality happens. And I want to know, what these activists who are talking about many different things, are you also making sure that housing is affordable for people in this area? The vice mayor talks a lot about economic development on Andrews Ave. a lot of non-white people that live on Andrews Ave with me. Are you going to be pushing us out? Like, what does that mean? You know, there's many different parts of this whole conversation, and I can only imagine what the next 6 months to a year is going to look like with this.
Yeah, and you touched on an important part, Alex, right? Like, you know, when I think of what happened to LaTanya, when I think of what's happened to my friends, it's usually on the drive, right? Wilton Manors is bigger than just the drive, right? Wilton Manors is pretty big. It's a pretty big city. And like you said, there are non-white people there that are also, but it's on the drive, you don't expect for that to happen. Like, that's our safe space, you know? And like, according to like what Al wrote in the story, it's like, it's LGBTQ community people also not being inclusive and not seeing our Black brothers and sisters and theys and them.
And I think that's really important to emphasize because, you know, you get a lot of tourists here too, and you don't know exactly the walks of life that they come from. So, you know, when you're seeing things like happening in our community, you need to speak up. It doesn't matter what's happening, you know, because we have to protect ourselves, you know. A lot of people come here and there's a lot of people, as we know, that, you know, think very differently from us, you know, politically. And so, you know, and they also want to come here and have a good time too. So you have to be careful and you have to be mindful and just make sure that you speak up when you're seeing something.
Yeah. And I commend both of you for doing what you're doing with your organizations, because again, you know, one person doesn't feel like, oh, we're just an organization. We're just one organization, right? But it begins with one organization, right? And it begins with William telling Edward how they do things and Edward telling Alex how they do things. And, you know, you moving it forward and move that needle to the point where we don't have our beautiful community people not feeling this way. You know what I mean? I had never heard Wilton, what was it? Wilton White?
White Manors.
White Manors. I had never heard that before. You know, and I guess I get it. You know, I wouldn't have heard it, but like, I see it, you know, and it's not untrue.
It also takes shows like this that brings it out to the general public and into our community to say, hey, we need to step up our own game. So, you know, thanks to this show, we're actually, you know, we're helping.
It's one of our pillars, William. It has to be one of our pillars, right? And again, we go back to the things that we've learned many years ago. See something, say something, right? You're with somebody and you see some shit that doesn't seem right to you. You know, you've got that this ain't right. You know what I mean? And I don't need to explain to you, if someone's screaming the N-word at somebody, that is definitely the hell not right, you know? You know, I was filming something outside of No Manners a couple months back, and there was a person that walked by that thought I was trans, right? And threw something over. It's like, we don't want you trans people in here. And, you know, and for a moment, I felt what a trans person might feel in that situation. And I was so saddened. And I was so like, I wanted to get into the fetal position. And I automatically thought about my trans brothers and sisters and what they've got to go through in our safe community. You know? I don't know if it's CCTV. I don't know if it's more, but we need to do more. I don't want my Black trans friends to not feel safe in Wilton Manors. They should feel as safe as the four of us do.
Correct.
So that is the big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. So make sure to support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.